From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. I'm Nick Beres on this Monday. Hope you had a good weekend. It is live right now. We're going to open up the phone lines. We've got a good show on tap for you this morning. We're going to be talking to Davidson County's top lawman right there along with the police department. Yes, Chief Anderson's right there as well. But we also have with us this morning Davidson County Sheriff Daron Hall. Good morning to you, sir.
Morning, Nick.
It's nice to see you. I thought we'd just get right to it this morning. No need for me to blather. Just wanted to introduce you right off the bat. And
that sounds great.
It's good to have you. And, we're going to open up the phone lines as always, 737-7587. He basically manages a small city just outside the station here where the jail and all of that and the things the sheriff does. And you've decided you'd rather do that than manage the whole metropolitan city. I know last week many of you saw the story, and we'd asked him about it on the show recently, whether or not he was going to run for mayor. You were considering it, and I guess last week you finally decided, yeah, just not for me.
Yeah, I've always loved the job I'm in, and I was never interested in running away from that job. But I had been asked for 10 or 12 years. Really, a lot of folks assume that the next thing you'd want to do, and given that we have an open seat in the mayor's office here in a few months, I think people were looking for candidates or whatever, and I had a lot of folks asking me to look into it, and I just thought the right thing to do was to put all the information you had in front of you and then make a decision. I have a 12-year-old son, and the mayor's term would basically be 8 years if you stayed both times. And so I just thought, he's 12, he would be 20. I would miss what I think are the most important years maybe in some ways. And I would hate that, and he surely didn't want me to run. And
he really didn't want to, huh?
And my oldest begged me to run, and my youngest begged me not to.
And your dad, Durwood Hall?
My dad, by the way, his birthday was yesterday.
Happy birthday.
Went and saw, he was doing well.
Well, I mean, former councilman, he had to want you to run.
Well, he did tell me he thought I made a good decision, and he...
Well, he's always going to support you, I'm sure, but he probably thought, well, he'd make a good mayor. My son would make a good mayor.
He would have made a good mayor. I look back on a lot of things. He was very independent in a lot of ways, and, politically, and I thought that's something I really took away from him, is he felt like that you shouldn't be somewhat predictable, and you shouldn't be kind of something that everyone, believed that you would, whether it was a company line or the party line or whatever. I thought he was very independent. I've appreciated that the older I get and the more I'm involved. And when it came down to something like this, that was one of my struggles, to be honest. It's a tough road to get there. There's a lot of work that goes into the campaigning, of course, fundraising, and there's a lot that you have to do. And I love the job I'm in. I think I would enjoy parts of the mayor's role, and the city is a fantastic place to be. But I let the 12-year-old win this time. I think he was right that I would miss a lot, and quite frankly, the time I'm in my life just was elected sheriff term, and I felt a little weird about leaving, having just been elected and running.
But you wouldn't have had to give up your sheriff's position to run. If you had ran and won, yeah, you would have. Had you ran and lost, you would have still been sheriff.
Yeah, I felt a little funny the whole campaign for sheriff, because I had opposition and I was running and telling people this is what I wanted to do, and it was. And when that was over, we were on the show, and when that was over, I felt like, well, we won, and so now it's the right time to look into the other one. But it just always felt the timing of that felt a little awkward, and I think, like I said, hopefully, I've never done this before, but I do believe that the field of candidates will shake out, and I'm planning on being involved. I'd like to ensure that we get the right mayor in if I could. My vote, of course, is really all I can officially do, but I do want to get behind and look and see who and what these candidates stand for.
And I know you have to answer this anyway you feel you want to, but based on your research into this, and you spent quite a few weeks and months looking into whether you'd run for mayor, and I know you're telling us that part of it was family considerations that no one can dispute, that's important with your child, but do you think you could have won?
Sure.
Do you think you could have won?
Sure.
So it wasn't one of these things where, well, I researched it, and based on this and money, I don't think I can win, I'm not running. Your thinking was, you know what, if I go for this, I think I have a good shot at winning. But there are other considerations that supersede that.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't mean that arrogantly. I don't mean that sure we would have won. What I know is that the voters of Nashville, and we polled this and we looked into this, I believe we do a really good job in what we're doing. We believe, and I think the voters understand this, that if you can manage that money we've been managing for years and years, I've never been over budget. we've done some really good things, and that message in running for an office like this has proven to be successful in many other campaigns in the country. And the reality of it is this: you're going to have 6 or 7 candidates, and we would have been one of those. You're going to need a percentage, 30-40% maybe, to get into the runoff, and then you run again. And what people don't realize is the election just to get into the runoff is probably $1 million, maybe $1 million, maybe $1.5 million, and that's a lot of money. And then congratulations, you're 32%, and they're 26%. You're 6 points ahead, and tomorrow you have to start all over and run again.
You just don't. That process for some people is just so unpalatable.
It is just bad. And I'll tell you something that nobody cares about but me. This is a weird little nuance, but the Metro Charter. The Metro Charter is written very well in most ways, but there's some things that it needs to be fixed. It tells us that we'll elect a mayor every 4 years, the first Tuesday in August, and la-da-da-da-da. And so that's pretty established, and that'll happen this coming August. And then it says that the top 2 vote getters, if no one gets 50%, the top 2 vote getters will run off for 6 weeks.
Right.
Okay. So that means August, and it ends sometime in September. The election will be like the second Tuesday in September or something like that. I forget. It tells you when that election will. It never mentions how and when and where you swear in the mayor. So what happens is, when you get to the runoff, the person's going to have 6 more weeks. They're going to be elected on a Tuesday, and they'll count the votes at night. The next 2 days later, Election Commission certifies the results, and they raise the mayor's right hand. He goes to work, or she. That's nowhere else I've ever heard of that has an executive level job that doesn't say, and they'll be sworn in the second Tuesday in November. Put your team together, get your life together, get your sanity together, and then to start governing.
Right.
I remember Mayor Dean, who was the legal director, but he was down the hallway from then Mayor Purcell. He literally won on a Tuesday and was sworn in on Thursday and was the mayor. Well, he had very little knowledge of how he was going to run the place. I'm not critical of him. He took Mayor Purcell's scheduling and just took off and had to start trying to build his team.
That's
it
interesting.
really needs to be a date down the road, 6 or 8 weeks. Let whoever wins have the ability to put their mind together. And
I wonder why it is that way, because you're right. With the DA we just elected, Glenn Funk. Well, he knew there was going to be a time. So when he was elected, he had a period of time until things kicked in.
I'm the same way. I was elected in May.
You too, of
September 1 was 4 months.
So you knew then. Yeah, it's
the governor, the president. You really need to allow that process to elect and then clean up, and then you can. It's a big deal. You got to bring your own team together. You got to have your. Mentally, I think you need to go away and get your own mind.
After all that campaigning and just shit. Yeah.
So, but anyway, I think the strategy of running and winning, I think, is in our situation. We've been elected several times, and that allows you to have some name ID and so forth that others are going to have to go pay for to raise. And on the other hand, you'd wake up, I think, in a runoff with someone, and when you do, you're going to spend all that money all over again, go right back through the campaigning, and wake up sometime probably October of next year with the keys, whoever it is, to the office. And a couple things that people haven't thought of. We've never elected a mayor that we haven't elected before. Now, Bredesen ran 3 times and finally beat Boner, who was in a disgrace period of his term. But the truth is, we've always elected people who've been elected to other things for that job. It doesn't mean you have to be.
Okay, so like
Briley and Boner.
Well, what about Dean?
Well, he was a public defender for 2 elections.
And he was elected. I guess I forget. You have to. That's right. I knew he was a public defender, head of the public. I guess
then
that's
he went
elected.
to legal director.
And then he was legal director within the mayor's office under Purcell. Yeah. So you're saying we've never elected someone that hasn't been elected to public office in some degree before that?
Yeah. Bredesen is a little bit unique in that he ran for mayor twice in Congress and lost all 3 of those, and then he beat Boner in the middle of his term. Do you remember the Boner won, and then he beat Bredesen, and then 4 years later, Boner's situation kind of caused that to be. So that one's a little bit strange in the sense that he had run 3 times, spent a whole lot of money in running, and then finally was handed the job in an election midway through Boner's term. What I think is interesting is typically the candidates that jump in races like this have never been elected. I think the only one that's in the race now would be Megan Berry, who's been in the council. And there'll probably be some others that get in, but it's very unusual for us to elect someone outside of the election process for a job like this. It's also unusual in the way that we're going to do it, because you're going to have multiple candidates, and you're really looking for who can get a percentage that gets them in the runoff.
Yeah, and sometimes that's certain
the trick.
candidates that may be very good or like each other, they split the vote.
Yes,
and
it's going to be interesting.
All right, listen, we'll take a break on that note. When we come back, we wanted to touch a bit on him not running for mayor. We'll open up the phone lines as well, and something we didn't talk about as much now. I mean, I think clearly you want to stay as sheriff. You've always said you wanted to do that as well, and we'll talk about some of your goals and such since you were just reelected. And we'll take other calls. Joe, if you're on hold, stay there, and the others 737-7587. Questions or comments for the sheriff right after this.